What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to talk about all of the changes happening in the toys that don't change, if you know what I'm saying, the ones that don't transform. There's been a lot of stuff going on if you've been paying attention. I've been paying attention, and I smell drama, and we're going to get to it. We're going to talk about Super 7, we're going to talk about Flame Toys, we're going to talk about Threezero, we're going to talk about Transformers Red. But try to connect all those pieces, more so about how that game is changing specifically, less so about, showcasing. However, we're going to talk and show the figures as we move through and define what makes these companies different. But don't get lost in the sauce, you know what I mean? The point is that the game is changing, and if people don't keep up, they're gonna get left behind. We haven't talked about these companies in a while, so we're gonna get into it. Real quick, everything has shipped from me, from the pre-orders, from the blankets. So everything has shipped. If you've not gotten your shipping notice or have not gotten your stuff, either you sent it friends and family or something got lost in the sauce, contact me if you haven't heard from me. Everything has shipped. All right, next bit of business, we got to do a little bit of housekeeping. So for the third-party awards, yes, I usually throw Hasbro stuff in with the Chug stuff because I just don't look at enough third-party Chug stuff to kind of make any sort of recommendations. Otherwise, it would just be a best of MMC reformatted for the year, and some of that stuff doesn't even necessarily deserve to be nominated in that category. So I should have mentioned it. It skipped my mind. However, I usually, I think, have included the regular Chug stuff in there because I just don't have the options. And if I haven't, I've always wanted to, and oh well. There it is. As far as Wreck-Gar goes, apparently there's a tire that goes at the front and a tire that goes at the back. I didn't notice in that it works both ways in terms of connecting them, but apparently the wheels spin better if you have the right one at the right place. Small criticism, but disregarded if it's accurate. And there's apparently kickstands too that I missed. So just strike that criticism from it as well. Everything else, I think there was stuff that people were saying about the Galvatron as far as getting it to stick together better. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't. Not on the copy that I have. It does not stick together well. I think I had the parts that people were talking about. I don't know. It's already shipped back to Paul C. But I'm pretty sure I had everything right on that, and it still doesn't, it's not great. It's been the year of disappointing Galvatrons, in my opinion. Doesn't matter. Let's continue. The one last thing I gotta say is next week we have reviews. The week after will be our best worst series for the year, and then we'll bring in the new year. So don't expect any reviews in 2 weeks. That's going to be our best worst, which is still good stuff. All right, so let's go. So the first thing I want to talk about is we've talked about this in the past, right? That we've had these companies. We've had Reveltech throw their kind of hat in the ring with their Optimus Prime that I absolutely love. Flame Toys has obviously been a huge contender, and Threezero has kind of always been there in the background, but we've been seeing Threezero sort of constantly improve, which is a beautiful thing. Now, Super 7 is kind of new on the scene with it, and they have like the reaction figures, which are kind of like the vintage 5-point of articulation. Kenner Star Wars, think of that. But they recently got the license to do non-transforming action figures in a very G1 cartoon kind of nostalgic way, heavily relied upon with accessories and et cetera, et cetera. I have a whole thought process and opinion on Super 7. If you listen to Nerd Rage Radio every week, you kind of already know my opinions. I could do a video on it. It just doesn't necessarily make sense for this channel. Maybe I'll do something for Patreon. But Super 7 has now released 3 official waves of these figures. And they also have, obviously, a G.I. Joe license, so they're working hand in hand with Hasbro. Let's take a look at them. So the Transformers Super 7 line has announced 3 full waves at this point. The first wave included an Optimus Prime that came with 2 heads, 3 pairs of hands, an axe, Matrix of Leadership, jetpack, blaster, basketball, surfboard, Spike Witwicky figure, Energon binder. The Ghost of Starscream, which comes with 3 head sculpts and 3 pairs of hands. The Bonsaitron figure, which comes with 3 pairs of hands, blaster, and razor sharp. And a Bombshell figure with 3 pairs of hands, blaster, short burst, stinger rifle, and needler. All of which are definitely trying to kind of capture the more campy elements of the cartoon, which is why they include the surfboard and stuff. So that's, and the basketball says kind of their angle. It's kind of how they get their foot in the door to kind of carve out their own niche. Simultaneously, Super G1 accurate, of course, also able to offer a wide range of characters. I mean, we have everything from the standard Optimus Prime to the super obscure Bonsaitron with an array of things in between, right? And that was wave 1, which is up for pre-order still for $215 for the set of 4. Quick math on that is more than $50 a figure on your online retailer. color. Now the second wave, once again, we have two more of the big six, with Megatron with 3 interchangeable heads, regular head, power hungry head, and head with mind control, 6 interchangeable hands, hand holding Energon cube, an antimatter chest, Kremzeek, chemical flask, laser sword, blaster, pearl of Bahudin, and 2 energy maces. Grimlock, which once again they pack full of accessories with 6 interchangeable hands, mind transfer helmet, soft goods, waiter apron. Speaking of which, I need to get an apron for my wife for Christmas. And I know that sounds like a terrible gift, but she actually wants one. 6 pieces of drinkware, fist. Anybody know where good aprons are? Like if you were to get like a classy, not like Kiss the Chef, but like something nice. Fist, king crown, and wheelie. A Trax figure, 2 interchangeable heads, regular head and evil alien robot head from the Hoist Hollywood bit. 6 interchangeable hands, a tank, ion blaster, both toy and cartoon inspired, and Blaster's boombox. And then for your super obscure figure, the bludgeon figure with 2 interchangeable heads, 6 interchangeable hands, head wire bundle, katana and sheath, other weapons, tank blaster, ion blaster, turret shield, etc. And once again, we get 2 super standard characters, super G1 accurate in terms of tune. They fill you to the gills with the campy accessories. Of course, you get the apron and the drink tray and all that, right? And for Megatron, he's kind of in a kind of a nice spot in terms of the cartoon where you can just kind of fill him to the brim with all sorts of stuff. And then they offer Trax, which is like their bombshell of the wave, right? With a sort of seasoned character to kind of fill out your ranks, and then another super obscure. And then we get to wave 3, which has already started doubling down on Primes and Megatrons. So we get Prime as an alligator with a battle taxi, Decepticon tower, arm, ion cannon, head with light piping, and wire bundle. You get Megatron G2. So we're already at a G1 now with 3 interchangeable heads, 8 interchangeable hands, 3 blasters, shoulder tank, ion cannon, toy inspired, ion cannon, sword, ammo belt. Then you get Wreck-Gar, which is a rank character with 2 interchangeable heads, 8 interchangeable hands, 2 axes, 2 energon sticks, 2 tire shields, blaster, handheld TV, soft goods, waxing cloth, and a wax bottle. And then for your obscure character, oddly enough, you get Tarn, which I might end up buying, with 2 interchangeable heads, 8 interchangeable hands, a mask, nickel minibot figure, nickel minibot jetpack, and double ion cannon. So we get 2 standards once again, 1 rank character, which is your Wreck-Gar, and then 1 obscure character, which is Tarn, which is not only obscure, but not even part of G1. And oddly enough, speaks to the value of his character in this franchise. The second party, if you will, release of the figure, with Flame Toys being the first. So this is new developments all for them, right? But it's not what's interesting. What's interesting is the Transformers Red line. Now let me paint a picture for you. And we've done videos here on licensing in the past where we actually talked to a company that talked about how they deal with licenses and the amount of money it costs to get a license and all that kind of stuff. So we've covered that here. Let me paint a picture for you. You are Super 7, right? You're the CEO of Super 7. Congratulations. You finally have a sit down with Hasbro, one of the biggest players in the game in the domestic toy market, right? Own some of the biggest franchises, right? The House of Transformers, the House of G.I. Joe, the House of My Little Pony, the House of Nerf, Magic, etc., etc. You pitch an idea of non-transforming figures. You're also currently doing Thundercats. You're currently doing Silverhawks. You're bringing all these old nostalgic 80s cartoons and franchises back to the forefront with action figures. What could be better than if you had Transformers and G.I. Joe, 2 of the big ones, right? So you pay whatever, like, exorbitant, I'm sure, price there is to pay for the license for these figures. You jump through all the hoops there is to jump through. You do everything you have to do. You start design. Even though these figures were announced but so long ago, you have to imagine that the design for them took much longer, like that they've been working on it for years before we knew about it, at the very least 6 to 8 months. And what do you see as you're getting ready to go to market? Hasbro's Transformers Red line, a line of non-transforming figures that Hasbro is doing. How do you feel? I'm going to give you a minute to just answer that. Matter of fact, answer it in the comments. How do you feel after having made that business negotiation? Now, I'm sure it's all contractually on the up and up. They don't owe you anything. But they just did exactly what you said you were going to do differently after you bought in. This isn't the same scenario as their G.I. Joe line, which is very kind of toy accurate, cartoon accurate, versus the classified line, which is more stylized. These are both pretty cartoon accurate. They're nuanced. But how do you feel about that? I would imagine that that felt like a pretty swift kick in the nuts. But Hasbro sees the market and that there is a market for that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Transformers Red Line briefly. So we're going to go over the Red Line briefly. We're not going to go over each figure and make sure we account for all the stuff because we've kind of talked about it in the past. But speaking of it in the past, we did review the first wave, which was Optimus, Megatron, and Soundwave, 3 of the big 6, getting them right out of the way. And I'll be honest with you, I had really high hopes for these figures, as most of you know, and I was ultimately extremely disappointed, also as most of you know. In fact, I reviewed Chris Pinkerton, If You're Nasty, co-host of Nerd Rage Radio's set, even though I had a set on the way, and I still haven't opened the set that I eventually got myself because I just don't care about them. But in spite of me caring about them or not, it didn't stop them from making more. In fact, we got a number of other reveals as time went on, including evidence that they were going to span across all genres of Transformers and eras, with a Transformers Prime RC, as well as a Beast Wars Cheetor. Both look on standard. Both look a little bit more elegant, a little bit more action figure-y than the Super 7. Arguably better, although I don't think the Super 7's objective is to look better. I think it's to look as campy and cartoony as possible. In spite of them being so similar, I do think they are looking to do different things. It's just a very nuanced difference. We also got a Bumblebee, which I'm actually considering buying to switch out for my MP because I hate the Masterpiece version and I'm still rocking the 1.0 because I think it's the best looking one available. And then, of course, we got a Starscream, another one of the big 6. That will allow you to do all of the Seekers. And speaking of repaints, we got a Megatron that's being reformatted. And then another original mold that we got was the Optimus Primal. And I don't think that this line is really going to be standing the test of time. I think it will be ultimately short-lived, however time will tell. They have already gotten further than I expected that they would, just in terms of the general feedback that I have heard amongst the fandom. But like I said, what's interesting about this is not that it exists. It's how it exists at the same time as the Super 7 and perhaps the dirty stains that are on that business deal. I think those figures arguably look better than the Super 7. I think they're probably more articulated than the Super 7 will end up being, and I think that they're cheaper. Well, I know that they're cheaper, and they're also, the only downside to them is that they're only available, I believe, at Walmart. So they're exclusive. But the Super 7 stuff's only available via online retailers. So like, there's tension there. There has to be. It can't be all sweet. It can't be on the up and up. But that's more so the kind of lower level game to this, right? The big player has been Flame Toys, and you know I've been a huge advocate of them. However, it's been impossible to ignore the blunder that was Flame Toys' Victory Leo that was released this year, or Victory Saber, whatever it is when they're both together. And actually, the Lion separately as well. Victory Saber, I think, and Victory Leo's the Lion. It doesn't matter. The issue with Flame Toys and this sort of kind of mess up is that when you are charging these prices for a product that I stand behind as being valued at that price, I have told you countless times here that they make a stellar product. That it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and the movements are extremely elegant and super tolerant. It's a superior level of tolerance in regards to all of the moving pieces that I haven't ever quite seen in an action figure, period. I'll just be honest. However, with that gift comes the curse, and that curse is the price point. Now, everything is dependent upon the quality of the piece. It's a house of cards, really, and the moment that you take away the quality of the piece, it's no longer worth the price point. And what we saw with the Victory Leo, both the Lion and them combined, was failure. The Lion doesn't really work, has a tendency to constantly fall apart, and the combined mode can't stand unless you glue it together for the most part. They can't afford that type of a mistake because we can't afford to keep paying for mistakes at that price point. But that doesn't mean they're dead in the water, and it doesn't mean there's no hope. I just think they should leave combining 100% alone. But they do have stuff in the works. In spite of the kind of rocky road that Flame Toys has had perhaps this year, they do not seem to be letting up. In fact, I thought maybe they had because I don't feel like the product is perhaps as hot currently as maybe it was 2 years ago, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a ton of stuff coming. They definitely have model kits coming, with the Windblade being one of the more notable ones that's coming soon, if not already out by the time this comes out. And they've even ventured into G.I. Joe model kits as well, with a Storm Shadow and I believe a Snake snake eyes. So all that kind of stuff is interesting. But in terms of the actual figures, I believe they have a Starscream coming, which of course can yield more results. You know, they can't help themselves, these companies, when it comes to this character. They can't take their eyes off the bag. In addition to that, we have a Rodimus Prime, which I'll be honest with you, I actually think the model kit looks better. But what are you gonna do? I think the model kit just looks a little bit more comic book accurate. And then there's Cyclonus, which looks absolutely stunning and amazing. And I'm trying to talk myself out of buying, but I might end up with this. Hard to say, really, but it looks really good. So they haven't let off the gas. However, there is a problem, and that problem is Threezero. You see, because you can't abuse a fan base, and I'm not accusing them of abusing. I mean, I think they're trying to make the best thing they can make. They just didn't with that Victory Leo thing. But like, if you can't charge this much money for a product and expect fans to keep eating it up when there's somebody right on your heels making a product at far less quality, isn't the same, but it's in the same ballpark. We're not talking apples and oranges. We're talking a Honeycrisp, which is a superior apple to whatever other peasant apple we're talking. Apples to apples. And Threezero has been climbing up the ladder like a rabid bonobo. Just hand over fist, over foot up this ladder, really carving out their niche. And the issue, not the issue, but the beautiful thing is not only are they carving out their niche both in the game, they're beginning to carve out their niche as their own Transformer designer, which we're going to get into here with Threezero. So let's talk about some of the stuff that we've looked at here on this channel recently. We looked at the Bumblebee movie Soundwave and Ravage, which was stellar. And I looked at this shortly after I looked at the Flames toys and even drove home that point even further. Also, side note, that Ravage transforms, yet somehow Hasbro was okay with that. Something to consider, something to think about perhaps for another discussion another day. But an absolutely stellar piece. Then we get word of these movie figures from previous films, like Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire, which looks ridiculous in all the right ways, right? Meaning it looks just like the character, and that is to say, awful. But that's not a Threezero issue, right? Threezero more than likely, given their track record, has knocked it out of the park. Same goes for their Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime. Absolutely stellar looking. And the reason why I have so much faith in these is because we've just recently looked at the Siege War for Cybertron. Now, the Megatron I don't think translates as well because of the proportions and some of the goofy stuff that goes along with the original design. However, the Prime, and I know I only looked at the Nemesis version, but still is magnificent. One of my favorite figures of the year. Absolutely stellar. And I got news for you, it's better than the Hot Toys, which it shouldn't be, but it is. But what I think is most fascinating are their most recent reveals of the MDLX Transformers figures, which includes a Bumblebee in their own style, their own design. And the same goes for their Prime. Now, both are undeniably those characters, meaning they stay true to the traits which define the character. The horns and color scheme and roof of the vehicle for the chest for Bumblebee, the cab windows, blue ears, face shield, smokestacks on the shoulder, etc., everything that you would expect for the Optimus Prime. And here's the kicker. The Prime is $80 and the B is 60. Now, the B is only 5 inches, so to speak, and the Prime is only 7. But in terms of an action figure, I have extremely high hopes for these two and expect them to be nothing short of spectacular. I think what we're looking at here is the kind of SH Figuarts option for a non-transforming figure of a franchise that we've probably deserved for some time. So the game is changing. It's changing on a number of levels. I'm not sure how we'll see Super 7 and Hasbro work together in the future because this had to ruffle some feathers. I would expect that it generally will have a lot to do with the success off of their first 3 waves. But I would expect that their first wave was at least successful enough for them to go ahead and start offering up a second and third wave when it's all at a pre-order level. But none of it's sold out. Keep that in mind as well. A lot of this Thundercat stuff sold out. But it's also caused Hasbro to kind of throw their hat in the ring and say, well, look, we can do this stuff too. There's obviously a viable market for non-transforming Transformers within the collector community. On the higher end of things, we've seen Flames Toys make a misstep and really allow the competition to sink its foot even deeper into the right path. And with IDW basically dead in the water, and nobody's more sad to say that than I am, I think it's going to be really easy for Threezero to kind of take that section of the fandom and then add in the other stuff. If you look at the price point of the Super 7 figure versus the Bumblebee, we're talking about $10 difference, if that. And that Threezero is going to be far superior. The fan base that Threezero could potentially capture with their designs in this game is crazy. And I think they got a good chance at doing it. I advise everyone to watch this company very closely over the course of 2022. All of this stuff in regard to the non-transforming Transformers is changing. And it's changing rapidly, and it's one of the more interesting things I think that's going on within the franchise at the moment. Next week should be a Versus. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.